Hi, I'm Kristine Moreland. I'm the founding executive director of The More We Love, an incredible organization that creates pathways out of homelessness, addiction, human trafficking, and domestic violence. The More We Love was created out of a space just straight from my heart and from my experiences. I come from a homeless heroin addict. That was my father, who lived on the streets of Seattle, and my mother, who was surviving being a single mom, trying to keep it all together through my childhood. I was subjected to a lot of hardships, a lot of things that a lot of young girls shouldn't have to see, shouldn't have to be part of. But it didn't kill my spirit, rather than it just kind of kept me going and trying to hold on tight. When I was 16, I actually ended up meeting my father for the first time. He knocked on my front door and I opened it, and there was a very scary man standing there. He then became the face of what I knew homelessness to be true. And to fast forward a bit in my story, and when I was 20 years old, I was driving in downtown Seattle, and it was the second time I saw my father, but this time he was flying a sign on the side of the road. And it really gave me one of those stomach punches where I just felt like I needed to do something, but I was terrified of what he represented, all of the things that had left me with so much harm in my past. So I started doing coat drives. I was a pretty passionate person about wanting to find everybody who had a coat. They could give it to me, and then I could make sure it was connected to the streets. I started doing those coat drives about 25 years ago, and when I stepped out on these Seattle's Union Gospel Missions outreach vans to actually disperse those coats, it was the first time I had a glimmer into what real love meant and what love was needed on the streets of Seattle. I went under the bridges, the dark alleys, and I found people that were vulnerable who needed us most. That's when I began to do my real work. I just started walking the streets of Seattle and becoming people's constants. It's one of the sayings I have. It's just show up for somebody, be their constant. And I would do that day in and day out. I did it for 20 years. And just recently, in the last couple years, we created this organization, The More We Love, as a response to the community, to the crisis that we have when it comes to the drug addiction, to the crisis of the human trafficking, the immense violence that's going on in their streets. We knew that we needed to step in a space to create a safety net for the women and children being abused. And so we built the street outreach teams. We opened a crisis center that runs 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. It provides a safe haven, pathways out of the addictions, the human trafficking. We take in women 24 hours a day. Most recently, we just took in a beautiful woman who was being trafficked off of Aurora with her 2-year-old child. The stories and the things that we see are real. They're really dark, but we have light because we are actually working in a space of lifting people up and out of here. So I get to do this work every day. I'm honored. It's a healing space for me as well. It's a space that I can say, I know what you've been through, but we're going to get you past that so that we can get to a better space. So I'm just deeply honored that I get to be doing the work that I get to do. A year ago, we opened the Pathway Inn in partnerships with South King County and the city of Seattle. The Pathway Inn is a crisis response center that has 22 available beds for women and children escaping domestic violence, human trafficking, addiction, and homelessness. I opened the center in response to a grave need. I would go out into encampments in South King County. I would walk the streets of Seattle, and I would see young women and children very vulnerable, especially to the crisis that we have when it comes to the drug addiction and the human trafficking. And I would want to be able to take these women somewhere safe. And every time I turned around to contact a resource, either they were full or it wasn't a safe place that I felt a woman deserved to go, i.e. there was drug use going on, there were still people in active lifestyles that would subject them to things that weren't safe. And so I kind of did that. I went all in, and a year ago, I sold my house and I opened up the crisis center, which we call the Pathway Inn. It's located in Renton, Washington. It runs 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, in partnership with law enforcement, community partners, and self-referrals, and even church referrals. We have women that come to us at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, 2 o'clock in the morning, at any given time in crisis. And crisis sometimes looks like a human trafficking circumstance where a pimp has held a young girl out onto what we call the blade or the track for endless hours, having to do unspeakable things, and she's being diverted by law enforcement into our crisis center so that we can get her safe. We have women who come to us through domestic violence where their abuser has spent ever amounts of time abusing them with children. We have women who come out of living of their cars and coming out of living even on the streets. We bring them into this center and we quickly stabilize their crisis. We meet their needs. We figure out, what does it look like? What does it look like before you became homeless, before the drug addiction took over, before the domestic violence? What did your life look like and what do you want it to be? We're really intentional with those questions because that creates that pathway. We get them into recovery first if there's active addiction, and after that the chains begin to break, and then we start to work on things like stabilizing childcare, food resources, getting them employment, and then of course up in housing. Since last June, we're proud to say that we've housed over 100 families through this crisis center, and we're just getting started. We have access to 109 of the rooms. Currently, like I said, working in 22 of them, but know that that will expand over the years. One of the questions I get so often asked is, what is a day in the life of? And, you know, I will give you kind of a glimmer into even just the day in the life of a phone call. 2 years ago, I received a phone call from a county sheriff who had a young woman who was in grave need. And I said, officer, you know, what is the circumstances? What is it that I can do to support? And she said, this woman just needs you, right? She needs your constant. She needs you to show up for her. And I said, what happened? And this young woman had been gang raped, brutally beaten, and left at a hospital, and she was pregnant. And he just said, you need to show up, Kristine. And so we quickly got her safe into a hotel room space. I showed up about 30 minutes after getting her there safe. I knocked on her door, and this young woman was in the bathtub waiting for me, just waiting for somebody to sit next to her and tell her it was going to be okay. Now, sometimes I walk into these situations and I don't even know if it's going to be okay, but I've got a call in my heart to do everything I can to show them that I'm just going to be there. I walked into that bathroom that day in the very vulnerable space that this young woman was allowing me to walk into. And she was beaten and she was naked and she was waiting for me to tell her it would be okay. And I got down next to her on the tub and I held her hands and I told her it would be. And you know, the funny thing is we both looked at each other and kind of giggled. And I think it was at that moment that she even realized that it just might be. I've been able to walk alongside this beautiful woman for the last 2 years. She is now housed. That baby has been born safe. She's clean and sober and she's thriving. And so I never know what is going to be on the other end of those phone calls sometimes, but I do know that it will be okay if I just show up. Pursuit Women, I just want to say thank you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for your love, your compassion, and your commitment to show up and make these beautiful hygiene bags. I think some people just think it's just hygiene, Kristine, and that is absolutely not the case. When our women come into our shelter, these are waiting for them on their bed. Oftentimes, they haven't had a thing of deodorant, fresh shampoo, conditioner, anything that is even just theirs, or quite frankly, a love note. And in these hygiene bags that you created and gave to us, all of that is in there. And so what a gift. It gives me goosebumps that I get to give these to the women and children that we get to serve. What a gift that they get to come in and feel completely loved and supported, especially from everybody at Pursuit Church. I just want to take a moment, thank you, and honor you because this really matters.